Hey guys, zpolt here. Welcome to my lab. So today we're gonna take a look at finally the KZ ZS10 Pro. So a lot of hype on this because this is the latest 10 driver system from KZ. And it has that KZ ZS10 kind of look. So as you guys know, the KZ ZS10 Pro is the top one recommendation here in the channel. So really excited. Take a look at this because of course, will it be the top one recommendation now here in the channel in the sub $50 range. We're gonna compare it also the CCA-C10, also the AS10 and other $50 earphones here in the channel. We're gonna find out in this video. But of course, we review budget-fi to mid-fi audio gear, so if you did that, consider subscribing. And also big thanks to Soul Audio for sending this over. Links down below for their shop. Use my links to help out the channel. So first, let's unbox this thing and take a look at what's inside. So you have the portrait of the IEM right here. It says KZ ZS10 Pro, professional 1 dynamic 4 armature driver. So 1 DD there at the base area. High sensitivity treble and powerful dynamic bass. Okay, so this is sort of set up like the KZ ZS10, the old one, not the AS10 where you have all BA kind of design. And usually KZ does well in the sort of hybrid kind of design. So really excited about this. And of course, you have a 0.75mm 2-pin connector, 7 to 40,000 Hz in terms of frequency range right here. I would say pretty average packaging here. Actually, the packaging here is less flashy compared to what we have the AS10. The AS10 really has a better packaging compared to this one. This is a typical kind of packaging. I wish that it has a better packaging, especially for that kind of $40 kind of price. So you have the IEM right away right here, and it kind of looks like the KZ ZS10 right here. KZ ZS10 Pro and 10 units hybrid technology earphone. Let's open this up. So typical ear tips right here. Okay, so yeah, typical kind of starlight tips that you have with typical KZ. And this is the new tips that they include. This is the softer version, which is nice. So actually the new tips is not bad for me now from KZ. The one that they had before with the glossy kind of plastic is not something I like. And what we have with the cable is the typical KZ cable. Again, for this price range, I wish it was a better cable. Maybe the silver cable can be a better option compared to this one. But yeah, this is the typical KZ cable. Something that you will upgrade anyway. So you have a memory hook right here, and the connector is similar to what you get with the KZ ZS10. So that is kind of a good sign here. And you have this L plug right here. Some space here for maybe some cases that is big. So this will fit more cases compared to the CCA1. But definitely I'm not a fan of the color here. Maybe you've heard me say that for 100 times now. But yeah, still, I need to say it for the purpose of this review. So let's take a look at the lobes now. So yeah, right off the bat here, this is really shiny. This is more shiny compared to the KZ ZS10 and also compared to the KZ ZS10 Pros. This is really shiny here. Maybe the most shiny that I have seen here in the lab. So this has a different kind of finish that you get with other IEMs. So let's take a look at here. Look at this, guys. This is really shiny, a glossy kind of finish, but definitely it has that kind of upscale design. It is a little bit different compared to the KZ ZS10, definitely. But yeah, the design here is like ridges right here. It's not the spikes kind of design that you get with the KZ ZS10 Pro. And you have some bezel right here, which is kind of cool. You have some holes here also. So sort of like the KZ ZS10 Pro also, but you have some screws here. At the other side, it's actually not that big. I was surprised how small this is. This is definitely smaller compared to your KZ AS10, which is a good sign, I would say, because yeah, it will be more portable. And you have a see-through kind of design here at this side. So yeah, a pretty slick, I would say here. 10 drivers for this kind of small package. Definitely, I'm not sure how they fit all those in. And here, actually, the default tips that they include here is different from the tips that the replacement tips that they have. This doesn't have the starlight kind of design, which is kind of cool, I would say. I prefer this over the starlight tips that they include here. Okay, so the cable is in, and again, this is more stable compared to your usual KZ. So I wish that they just stick with this kind of design. I wish they ditch the old kind of connector here. This is really stable, which is nice here. Okay, so this is how it looks like. I would say that in terms of fit, it is very similar to the KZ ZS10, if not a little bit bigger, but it's very similar. Of course, I will test, but it does feel really close to the KZSN. It does protrude a bit from the ear, but yeah, again, similar to the KZSN here. Really close. I would say it's also a looker. I like that kind of metallic kind of look. Of course, I prefer the one that I got with the KZSN, which has a more kind of space gray kind of look. But this is not bad. It still has that kind of upscale kind of design with that kind of silver metallic kind of design. I like it, and also the fit here is really good. Also, it's pretty flush in the ear, and it does isolate well here. I would say above average in terms of isolation. Comfort wise is above average as well, very similar to the KZSN. So actually I would not be surprised if this is the really same case compared to the KZSN. Let me get the KZSN and do a quick comparison here. Okay, so this is the KZSN. It's actually a little bit bigger and a little bit heavier. Also, just a touch here. They're really very similar. I need a sort of a caliper to measure if it's really the same. It looks the same, but it feels a little bit bigger in the ZS10 Pros. Here at the side, you have a sort of deeper insert here in the ZS10 Pros. This is more out of the ear kind of design, but it's really close in terms of the look here, but the shape is a little bit different in the ZS10 Pros. So I would say that overall they're kind of really the same-ish, maybe just 1%, 10% difference here in the build department. Definitely the ZS10 Pros feels more heavy here and feels more substantial, of course, because of that number of drivers here. Overall, in terms of build and comfort, I would say that it's above average. I would say in the same level as the KZ ZS10 Pros. So I already listened to the KZ ZS10 Pros and also compared it with the other earphones here in this channel. And right off the bat, this is the best KZ that I've heard, and really like the sound here in the ZS10 Pros. So this is still a V-shaped kind of sound, but I would say warmer compared to the ZSN. So the bass is a little bit more elevated here. Still lively sounding, fun sounding here, but I would say not as lively as the ZSN Pros. This is has a more relaxed kind of approach compared to the ZSN Pros, but this is still lively, this is still dynamic sounding. Still a very fun sound here in the ZS10 Pros. So what really amazed me here is the amount of detail across the range. This has good detail across the range. Really, the 10 drivers here shine in the ZS10 Pros. So the highs are well controlled, no sibilance here, and also well extended there in the highs. The highs here are more natural compared to the ZSN Pros, so I kind of prefer the highs here more than the ZSN Pros here. And definitely really good detail in the highs here. The mids are thick, good detail here, and also the mids are also forward in the mix compared to other V-shaped earphones. Very listenable mids here, I would say, and also a great amount of detail in the mids here. One of the best mids I'd say that I've heard in a KZ. Bass is in the boomy side but well controlled. It doesn't overpower the rest of the spectrum, and as I mentioned, is a bit more forward in the mix. So this is definitely a warmer kind of signature here. This will satisfy bass heads as well because of that warmth here at the bass side. And it also has some punch here in the bass department, has a nice dynamic kind of punch here. So definitely the hybrid kind of system here really worked, I would say, here in the ZS10 Pros. The soundstage here is big. I would say the biggest that I've heard in a KZ. This is definitely TFZ S2 level now in terms of the soundstage. Really impressive soundstage here. Was amazed by the soundstage presentation here. The depth is also the widest here. Height is not so much, but definitely there's a very good depth here. Imaging here is also very good. The 3D stage is well done here. I would say above average, and again, the best that I've heard in a KZ, better than the ZSN Pros. Instrument separation here is not a black and white. Again, this is more of like a smooth kind of presentation, but there's no congestion here. The instrument separation here is very good. This is not like the AS10 that has some congestion, because yeah, usually for KZs, if they have a 10 driver kind of system, it's kind of like congested in terms of presentation. This is not the case here in the ZS10 Pros. It's well controlled, very good instrument separation here, smooth, and the presentation, I would say very impressive also in terms of the instrument separation and imaging here. So the sound here is very likable. It's sort of like the KZ-ZS10 Pros in a way, but upgrade it and make it more detailed across the range and add a touch of warmth. So that is sort of a signature here. There's definitely a KZ-ZS10 Pros upgrade. So compared to the CCA C10, very similar sound here, I'd say, but the CCA is a touch more relaxed sounding. CCA also is more balanced sounding. I would say less bass also in the CCA. There's less punch in the CCA. I would say less dynamic, lively kind of sound in the CCA C10. The highs are less also in the C10. Mids are more forward in the mix in the C10 though. Bass is a bit less also in the CCA, less warm in the CCA compared to the ZS10 Pros. Imaging is less in the C10. Stage is less in the C10, less depth, less layering also in the C10. Instrument separation is about the same here. Overall, this is a kind of a toss-up for me. I would say if you love more forward mids, go with the C10, but if you love highs, go with the ZS10 Pros. But there are other factors like maybe the imaging and also the soundstage that kind of leans me toward the ZS10 Pros, but I would say that pretty equal. But I would give a slight edge to the ZS10 Pros here. That is how I would say I am amazed with the ZS10 Pros. Compared to the ZS10 Pros, they're both fun sounding, both lively sounding. The ZS10 Pros have more warmth. Both are V-shaped kind of sound. The ZS10 is more balanced though. Again, the ZS10 is more warm. The highs are more crispy in the ZS10 Pros. I prefer the more natural highs in the ZS10s. Mids are less detailed in the ZS10. Again, in the mids department, usually the KZ-ZS10 is not its strength. Definitely the ZS10 is better in the mids department, especially in the details department. The bass is a touch less in the Pros. I would say the ZS10 has more bass there. So definitely, yeah, for bass heads, ZS10 Pros might be something that you might like. The stage is less on the Pros. Imaging is both competitive. I would say similar here. Maybe a touch more in the ZS10, but very, very close here. Instrument separation here is similar. Both are sort of smooth in terms of the presentation. So definitely the ZS10 is better detailed across the range, especially in the mids department. Overall, definitely the ZS10 Pros is an upgrade from the ZS10 Pros. It's the big brother of the ZS10, let's put it like that. So compared to the TF-ZS2, sound-wise, they're pretty close in presentation here. I was surprised how close they are. They're both lively sounding, both fun sounding, and both mids are forward in the mix. I would say surprisingly the ZS10 has more details compared to the S2. S2 has more highs extension here, so if you love highs, maybe the S2 is better for you. The bass quantity is almost similar. They both have some punch, some dynamic punch in the bass here. The S2 has less imaging, the ZS10 Pros is better. The S2 has less layering also, the ZS10 again is better. The stage, I would say, I would still give the edge to the S2 in terms of the stage, but they're really, really close here in the TF-ZS2. Again, it's kind of a toss-up for me here, but I would give a slight edge to the ZS10 Pros, and that's not something that I usually do, especially for the TF-ZS2, which is something I'm a fan of. I would give a slight edge to the ZS10 Pros here. Compared to the AS10, AS10 is definitely warmer, more bass in the AS10, and also I would say the detail retrieval is a bit similar here in the AS10 and the ZS10 Pros. Definitely the AS10 has more tight bass because of that BA kind of bass, but it lacks that kind of punch that you have with the dynamic driver bass in the ZS10 Pros. The mids are similar here, both are kind of detailed sounding. The AS10 has a little bit of congestion there, so that makes the mids shine less compared to the ZS10 Pros. Highs have more similarity, but the ZS10 has more lively highs and also more kind of transparent kind of highs because of that congestion that the AS10 has. Imaging is less in the AS10. Soundstage is smaller in the AS10. AS10 sort of has a more intimate kind of soundstage. Definitely the ZS10 Pros is better in that regard. The instrument separation is less in the AS10 also because of that congestion. So overall, I would prefer the ZS10 Pros more than the AS10. Okay, verdict. So big wow here with the ZS10 Pros. I'd say if you're looking for the best KZ, this is something that you should pick up. I would say that this is the best KZ right now, the best that I've heard at the least. Definitely this is a really competitive kind of sound. For around $40, you have that good looks. I would say the cable again is left to be desired, but it's working. You have that kind of upgraded tips that you get now with the new KZs. And again, you have that kind of sound, that likable kind of sound, lively sounding, good detail across the range, good mids, good highs, enough bass. So definitely if you're looking for, I would say, the best KZ in the price range, this is something that you should take a look at. Again, this is a touch warm. So definitely if you're looking for a more kind of balanced sound, this might not be for you. This is a touch warm compared to maybe the KZs and Pros, but I would say not that far. But of course, that will depend on you. I would say for me, this is now can be my daily driver now. This definitely worth the $40 that they're asking for it, I would say. And I would say really impressive work here by KZ. They're killing it with the KZSN Pros and now the KZ ZS10 Pros. Definitely worth the $40. I would definitely recommend it. So that is my review of the KZ ZS10 Pros. Of course, I will compare this more with the ultimate comparison with other $50 earphones here. I just chose one of the more popular ones, but I will definitely do a fuller comparison with the other $50 earphones here in this channel. And of course, stay tuned for that. Subscribe for that here in this channel. Of course, leave a like if you learned something. And also, again, big thanks to Lensol Audio for sending this over. Links down below for their shop. Support their shop, and it supports the channel as well. And have you listened to the ZS10 Pros? What do you think of them? How did you find them? Let me know down below. And of course, I'm gonna see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.